next episode of the Klingberg Wing Mark II development. I'm Raul Klingberg, your host. Let me start off by apologizing about the video and the sound. My regular video camera is down for the count, and I'm using my GoPro today, which doesn't have a remote input for a lapel mic, so we're just going to have to bear with today. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Elevon lumps here, and if you've been watching the previous videos, you know that I've been looking for ways to keep the flow attached longer on the control surfaces, the Elevons, and that is for high deflection angles. On a normal aileron or Elevon elevator, actually any control surface, you're going to get maybe 12, 15 degrees of deflection before the flow starts to separate significantly. Once the flow starts to separate, you get a big run up and drag, and the control surface loses effectiveness. And in my case, I was getting into throw ranges of up around 25 or 30 degrees. Flow is completely separated. I was getting non-linear control effects, and the aircraft was extremely difficult, if not impossible, to fly. Certain circumstances I just had to release and become a passenger. I was more spectator than pilot. So we have the Elevon lumps now. We tried vortex generators. They help a little bit, but they're very draggy. We tried trip strips. They didn't work at all. No matter where we put them, they didn't help. But the Elevon lumps appear to be helping. And if you want to find out how these actually work, the mechanism by which they work, you can click on the link in the video description, and it will take you to the Wikipedia page that describes this effect. So I've created these lumps for the Elevon that run the full span of the Elevon, and I've been waiting for good winds at Pacifica. You've noticed in the previous videos that I go out to Pacifica when the wind is blowing, set up on sawhorses, and do my testing there and use nature's wind tunnel. My good buddy Bob, my buddy Bob says, hey, you know, the last video you're sitting there, you go like, we're waiting for the wind. It's like, oh, it's 8, it's 10, oh, 12, quick, let's move the Elevon and maybe we get some tests done here. And he says, what you really need is a wind tunnel. And I says, yes, Bob, you're right, I need a wind tunnel. In fact, I started out my career as an aeronautical engineer doing wind tunnel testing. So very familiar with the advantages of a real wind tunnel. But they're notoriously difficult to come by. They're busy all the time, and they're very expensive to get time in. Extremely, extremely expensive. More than the cost of this aircraft. So it's really just a non-option. And that's why we go out and we do flight testing. Then Bob and I talked about what everybody has mentioned. Why don't you just call up Wills and ask them to borrow their test truck with the mount on it? Well, that's an interesting thought, but that mounts for flex wings, and it's set up to tie into one point, right there where the control bar is and the pilot hooks in, and this is not a flex wing. It's not going to mount that way, and I'd have to build an entirely new mount and modify his truck, and I might as well just start from scratch and build a mount for my truck. So really, that doesn't make much sense either. And I figure I just wait for good winds at Marina Beach. We get down there and we test the full-size lumps on both sides and see if I've actually gained control, more control authority, more effectiveness. And in the meantime, I thought I need to take a wing panel out and just make sure that these lumps are really working and they're behaving as expected based on my subscale tests. And so I got them all set up here, and I got some little tufts set up here with mag tape, and I'm ready to go. And when I was setting these up, just because I like to play and so forth, I got up by the leading edge and I went, and I blew on it. And I saw that even though the Elevon was down, the little tufts stayed attached really nice, but how hard can I blow? 5 miles an hour or something like that. And I thought, and then the little light bulb finally went on. It's like, I don't need to test the whole Elevon span. I only need to test one small little section, one little strip. If this strip works, then the next one works, and the next one works, and what's the point of testing the whole wing? You've got to drag it around all over the place. All I need is sufficient wind flow, and then the second light bulb went on that said, oh, I already own a wind tunnel. It's variable speed. All I have to do is measure its velocity capabilities, and I got me a handy dandy portable wind tunnel. And let me flip the screen around here and I'll show it to you. Here's my wind tunnel. It's an easy-go leaf blower, lithium ion powered, pretty cool. Old, been through a lot of miles, I've used this a lot. But this is a very strong leaf blower. It's really high quality. It's a nice unit. I like it a lot. And the handy part is right inside this area here, they have a flow straightener. They actually built in a set of vanes to de-rotate the flow, and then there's a second set of vanes to straighten the flow. And I thought, wow, how nice of them. They built me a fit-in-your-hand portable wind tunnel. It's like, what speeds does it have? Well, it's variable right here. I have a knob that goes from low to high, and then I have a boost function here. And what kind of speeds can I get out of this thing? Well, I discovered that, let's see. Oh, there we go. So at low, I get about 17 miles an hour. At medium, I get 23. Oh, 23 stall speed. And up here at the upper end, I get 30. Well, 30 is kind of what you could fly around at, slow speed flight. So, this is actually better than the beach. I have controllable airspeed. I can set it to something that represents actual flight conditions. And I have the full-size wings, so we're up to the actual flight conditions Reynolds numbers now, when the speed is correct. And why don't I just use this and I'll test one strip of the wing and see how it behaves. So that's what I did. And it was very informative, and I'm going to run you through some tests today so you can, I'm going to replicate what I did last night in the garage so you can see it for yourselves. And that way I don't have to drag this thing out to the beach. I'm essentially all set up here to go out for the next round of test flights, and I thought I'd show you where we are in the meantime while we wait for the proper day to go out test flying. So I'm going to move you around here. I'm going to put you behind the wing so that you can see the tufts accurately. We're going to start out with a little bit of up elevator, and I'm actually going to vary the angle of attack. That's the other handy thing about this. I can start out at 0, and I can rotate this thing down and create an angle of attack on the wing. Who knows, we might actually see a stall develop on the wing. I have the Elevon currently set with a little bit of up elevator, like you might be carrying if you're going through a slow turn like this, where you're on the edge of a stall. It'd be interesting flight regime to look at. So let's do that. I'll get you moved around here, and let's take a look and see what we get. So as you can see here, I have 2 strips of tufts. Now, the straight flow from the leaf blower is really only good for one little narrow section like this. The boundaries of it are just mixed flow. It's not good for any testing purposes. The reason I have 2 strips here is this one has longer tufts on it. This one has shorter tufts. And I just wanted to see what the difference is. Of course, with tufts, you get into the flag effect. You can go look that up about why flags flap like this in the wind rather than just being straight. It has to do with separating flow. And long tufts will show a lot of that, and shorter tufts less of it. And I thought it'd be interesting to look at both. So let's take a look at what the wing is like when we get a little up elevator, and I'll vary the angle of attack on the leaf blower, and we'll see what we get. I'm going to set it up for stall speed. That's about 0 angle of attack, approximately. And let's go down, 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 down. Oops. There we see some separation. Well, that's kind of interesting. We see the start of some separation here that would be like a stall. Obviously, a leaf blower is not a wind tunnel, but it gets us in the ballpark, and we can see what's going on here. And the flow is reasonably well attached all the way back like we would expect. So let's reset the Elevon to the area where I was having trouble, which is a large amount of down Elevon, up around 20, 22 degrees. Let's set for that and see if these tufts are still staying attached to the Elevon. Okay, there we are. We got the Elevon set so that it's about 22 degrees down, which is about the maximum that I can expect to get. Remember, normally without the hump, the flow would be separating when we get around 15 to 17 degrees of deflection. So if I can get to 22 and keep this flow attached, say up to around in here, we're doing pretty good. So let's take a look. Okay, from what I've seen in previous tests, this actually looked pretty good. But how do we know that this thing's actually working? We really need a baseline to compare it to. We need a flapped surface that doesn't have a lump on it. And darned if I don't have one of those. It's down at the other end down there. It's called the flap. And I've set that up with a couple of tufts on it. And let's go down and take a look at that when it's deflected down at the same angle as the Elevon here. Okay, there we are. I have the flap down at the same angle as the Elevon that we just tested. And there you have it. Generally, we see these guys trying to follow the flow, but basically going straight off. And we're seeing the characteristic span-wise flow build up that we've seen previously on the wing, that when you put the Elevon down without the lumps, the flow would just go span-wise like that as it separated. And we're seeing evidence of that here also. So this is a good indicator that the lumps are actually doing their job on the Elevon. They're helping keep the flow attached to, say, about 3/4 of the chord of the Elevon. Once you get much past the hump of the lump, nice rhyme, huh? Once you get past the peak of the lump, you get a little bit past it, and then the flow separates because of the sharp corner it's trying to turn. But overall, it appears this pretty clearly shows that the lumps are doing their job. And let me take you back, and we'll discuss a little bit more about whether or not what they're doing is going to be sufficient. Okay, so here we are back at the wingtip. Elevon down. Now, instead of having the flow separate here on the Elevon, and these guys going out span-wise like this, we're staying separated up to about here, which is a big improvement. The point where it finally separates is about equivalent to what I saw on the Swift when I tufted that, and we did Elevon excursions, angle excursions, and when you had a lot of down Elevon on the Swift, that's right about where it started to separate back in here. So I'm probably doing as good as the Swift. This is about the maximum amount of attachment of flow that one could achieve. So let's talk about whether this is really going to work in real life when I want to go and fly it. My first concern is, what's the effect on pitching moment going to be of this lump? Is it, when I'm flying along in level flight and it's like this, am I going to get more nose down pitching moment? Am I going to be developing lift back here? And it's going to cause my stick forces to be different, you know, where I'm flying along level, but it's going to want to be lifting up like this, so I'm going to be resisting aft stick force. I'm going to have to hold the stick down. Am I going to need a trim device of some kind? I don't know. In higher speed flight, is it going to want to cause me to pitch nose up or maybe nose down? I don't think anybody could accurately say at this point, because we're dealing with separated flow regions and other effects. It's difficult to simulate without a very, very high-end program and a supercomputer. So really the only way to find out for sure is to go out and test the darn thing. Take it back to Marina Beach, do a couple of short hops, see what it's like. Before the short hops, I'll do some roll authority tests, and we'll test the trim point on it and see if it's stick stable at the trim point. We'll find out. It's really the best way to do it. And then if everything looks reasonably good, I'll take it for a short hop and see if I have better control than I've had in the past. We really will only find out if this is fully effective once we get it out to lake bed and tow it and get in longer flights to higher altitudes and higher speeds. So you might be wondering, oh, golly roll, isn't this really just a patch or a fix? And I can't disagree with that, it is. This is what they call an aerodynamic patch or a fix. And I don't like to put them on my aircraft. If it's designed right to start with, you don't need fixes. If you want to see an aircraft with a lot of fixes on it, go look at the stupid Cessna Skycatcher. I took some training in one of those, and when I walked around it, I went, oh my goodness, nothing but a junkyard of fixes on the aerodynamics on the thing, and some structural fixes too. They scabbed this on and scabbed that on. They actually have a gurney flap on the elevator. It's just poorly designed from the get-go, and they have a bunch of patches on it. And gee, I guess that's one of the indicators why it's not a very popular aircraft, and they stopped making them. So, a fix. But why would I do a fix and not just go back and fix the design? Well, two reasons on that. Number one, you know that the winglet goes here, and there's 6 feet of wingtip that attaches out here. And the wingtip has no control surfaces on it. So the winglet is a giant potential fence, and the wingtip, having no control surfaces, always flying. Has a lot of washout in it, always flying, acting like a tail. And the concept behind that was to make the glider spin-proof. And so far that seems to actually have worked. I've probably stalled it 5 times now on the 5 flights that I've had, and it has never dropped a wingtip. My original wing, that dropped a wingtip on the very first flight. Took off, slow, wanted to drop the right wing. I was able to pick it up with the aileron function and hold that wingtip up, but it was constantly pulsing the stick left to pick up the right wing on a very short hop. And that aircraft always wanted to drop a wing as soon as it stalled. You know, pick a side, it would drop one of them. Very disconcerting. This thing I have flown this thing through a turn in a stall and still had control over it, which is a really, really good thing when it comes down to gliders flying at low altitude and low speeds. Very safe. You know, you can continue to maneuver the aircraft and not fall out of the sky. In order to achieve that effect by moving the winglet inboard and having a big chunk of wing that has no control surface on it, it's always flying, I paid a price. I had to move the control surfaces inboard. I made them very large. These are 10 feet long. They could have a larger chord, but more chord at the root end really doesn't buy you much. You don't have much moment arm there. But I drastically reduced the amount of moment arm that the Elevons have. And I knew that could be a problem, because when the moment arm is the big deal on whether you have sufficient control forces. The sweep of the wing gives the elevator effectiveness, because the further outboard they are, the more swept back they are, the further aft of the aerodynamic center, you get good control effectiveness. And likewise the aileron function, as you move them outboard, you get a much bigger moment arm, and it gives you a much stronger rolling moment. And that's what's caused me to have to use large control deflections. Normally when you're flying along, You might, in normal flight, you're probably not moving the aileron much more than about this. And in turbulence, you might be doing something like this, you know, or maneuvering. If you wanted to roll into a thermal really tight, you might run it up to about 20 degrees or so, or down 20, something like that. But going 23, 24, or coming up way up here up to about 25, 26 degrees, that's pretty extreme. Usually only on aerobatic aircraft. And the reason I have to go to those extremes is because it is further inboard and I don't have as much moment on. And in fact, we've gone back and done runs on X-foil saying, how much longer does this have to be to give me decent roll rate? And it has to be somewhere between 2 and 3 feet longer, which means that I'd have to move the winglet outboard and I'd lose 2 feet of wing tip that's acting as tail. So I'd have 3 feet, I'd have 3 or 4 feet of wingtip left with no control surface on it and acting as a tail, and the winglet would be further out, which could be a plus. I'll get more moment arm on the winglets and I'll get better yaw stability. That will give me enough roll authority, but is 3 or 4 feet of wingtip enough to provide sufficient in-flight stability when the wing wants to stall or drop a wing and break into a spin? In other words, is 3 or 4 feet of wing out at the tip, always flying, enough to hold that wing tip up and keep it from dropping into a spin? The answer is, I don't know. I'm not sure anybody knows. And for me to make that modification requires, this would stay the same, but I have to completely rebuild the wing tips, and I have to build new winglet mounts, move everything outboard, then I have to slave an additional 2 or 3 feet of Elevon onto this Elevon. It's a major structural modification of the aircraft. There's some advantage to going ahead and making that change because I want to take the dihedral out of the wing. In order to take the dihedral out, I've got to cut up the wing tips a little bit. But to add control surface to them, well, that's 2 spars, remove all the covering, major change. Months of work, actually. You know, if you could work on this full time and you had unlimited money, you could do it in a month. But I have neither one of those. So it's going to, if I have to go to that modification, it's going to take a significant amount of time. And then there is the possibility that I will have lost the spin-proof aspect of the aircraft. And I'd prefer to not give that away if I don't have to. So, time will tell. We'll take these out to the beach and we'll see if this gives me enough control authority. We have roll rates from previous testing, and we'll be able to collect roll rates again and compare. I would like to have double the roll rate that I had before, and then I think we'd be in a range of what's flyable. I've also added in differential bell cranks on here, so I now have, when I move the control stick, I'm going to have more up Elevon than down Elevon, which will be a plus. That was an easy change to make, and I think that'll make the aircraft a little more flyable. So time will tell, but now we have to wait for winds at Marina so I can get out there on the sand, because, you know, if you're going to crash, sand is good. And there we are. Cross your fingers and hope it works. And I might continue flying the aircraft with this fix on it. If this works, I'll fly it. We'll do some towing at El Mirage. We'll get in some higher altitude flights and do a little maneuvering while I'm building a new set of wingtips rather than cutting up the old ones. Just keep the old ones, put them up on the rack, build a new set of wingtips. I still have all the molds, and put on wingtips that have the Elevon extending out, and that'll be might be the easier way to do it. It's just to build new ones. So hang in there with me, no pun intended, and we're going to see if we can get this baby really working. I knew I was taking a risk by moving the Elevons inboard, and this is the fallout of taking that risk, is that we have a patch on here now. So that said, I thank you for your continued support, and my patrons are the best in the whole world. They really keep this thing going. If you're not currently a patron, please consider going over to my Patreon site. The link is in the video description, and joining the team. But I need that continued support, and the testing is very expensive, driving around and going out and doing the testing. If you don't want to become a member of Patreon, but you'd still like to help a little bit, there is always the thanks button. If you look straight down from the frame that I'm in right now. You'll see a little heart shape there that says thanks. You click on that and make a one-time donation. It will be greatly appreciated. That will help cover costs of gas and other minor things. And without outside support, without additional money coming in, there's no way that I can actually do this project. I'd have to put my suit and tie back on and go back to work. Please consider donating and helping bring this design to its full capabilities. And it'd be a darn shame to watch it come to a halt right now. So please give your consideration. Take a look in your wallet, see if you got 10 bucks in there, hit the thanks button, or go over to Patreon and become a part of the team and get a bunch of technical information that you don't get here on YouTube. So fly safe, and bye for now.